This is Tommy's Outdoors 74, and our guest today is Diarmuid Ryan, who is the project manager for Marine Recreational Sea Angling Survey for Inland Fisheries Ireland. In this episode, we talk about the survey, what data is being gathered and why, as well as we dive deep into economic and conservation impacts of recreational sea angling. We also spend probably too much time talking about bass fishing. Diarmuid is a passionate bass fisher himself, so we spend a lot of time talking about lures and how to swim the lures and what are the best places for bass. We touched on bass stocks and whether they're going up or down or whether they're recovering or diminishing. Before I let you go to listen to this podcast, just a reminder that this episode, as well as all the other episodes of the podcast, are available on Tommy's Outdoors YouTube channel. So you can head on to YouTube channel and see the video version of this podcast. And other than podcasts, you will find there also blogs and gear reviews and much more. So head on to YouTube channel, Tommy's Outdoors YouTube channel, and subscribe. And now, without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Diarmuid Ryan. Diarmuid, welcome to the show.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for responding to my invitation. And just to lay it out for listeners, Inland Fisheries Ireland sent out a survey, online survey. Actually, not send out the survey. It was I found it on social media. I found it on Twitter, called Sea Anglers Behaviors and Attitude Survey. Mm-hmm. And I even complimented that on Twitter, that this is, I haven't seen many well-constructed surveys. But this one was well-constructed. It was really like and I'm quite critical about how the survey is constructed. No, it shouldn't go that way, like whatever. Because I've done a lot of them in my time. But that was really, really well-constructed survey. And it was asking questions, recreational anglers, that I was happy that someone, especially a official body like Inland Fisheries Ireland, is asking about, catch and release and how much they spend and because we all know that probably angling needs a little bit of a push and a little bit of more understanding from the general public how recreational angling contributes to economy, and that this is essentially an important thing. So you emailed me from like an official email then saying thanks for, and I think there was like a buff and line clipper or something as an incentive to actually.
Have you got them yet?
I did. They're quarantining in my quarantine room.
Good. They're also good. They're also good as a face mask for COVID as well.
Exactly. So I replied to that email and asked you if you would like to join me on the podcast, and here you are. So thanks again for your time.
No problem, and thanks for the kind comments about the survey, and I think a lot of that was down to the fact that a lot of us actually in IFI are keen anglers, so we did think of it in the context of what are we interested in as well. I mean, the main crux of the survey was to really get some idea about angling behaviour in Ireland. I mean, there's a lot of anecdotal stuff, but really beyond that, we'd all figure that most anglers spend a lot of time fishing on the weekends and in the summer, but there's really no data to define that, and it's great to have that down on paper now, because when we're actually doing the proper face-to-face interviews, so we can design our sampling frame around that to an extent. So, for example, we now have more evidence, rather than assumptions, we actually have data on paper to say, okay, we know that a lot of people do their fishing, especially say more keen or your average angler does more fishing on the weekend, so therefore we can focus more resources on the weekend. So that was the crux behind it. And and we gleaned some other great information as well. So now it's still live, so I'm looking forward to getting stuck in and untangling everything. And we'll get that out soon enough. But I think we might do another week and then close it.
And you're right, because and these were the questions that I like, that there is a majority of anglers who do their angling on the weekends, but then there is a small group of hardcore anglers who are going every day of the week or whatever, and then I'm really interested in the results of that, how that compares, for example, all the catches of the small group of hardcore anglers who are more often out at the water versus the larger populace who are all just doing that on the weekend. And probably, let's say, the sophistication or effectiveness of the crowd that does it only on the weekends might be less effective and less successessful, let's say, than people who are doing that every day of the week. And then how that compares. So that's very interesting. Go ahead.
No, this is it, and it's the same with the catch and release stuff. I'm always interested, say the big commercial species, say cod, for example. I think it's kind of safe to assume that the recreational angling proportion of cod captures is a drop in the ocean compared to the commercial catches. But say things like pollock, there may be, because it's only really kind of small kind of inshore boats that would commercial boats that would fish for pollock usually, certainly around Ireland. And pollock is a popular angling species, but we always have let pollock go. But some parts of the country they keep them for the pot, so it's nice to kind of get an idea of what's going on with that sort of resource, because everyone. Pollock are great angling species. They'll take a lure, they'll take bait, they get big. So it's great to kind of capture that.
Diarmuid, you're an angler yourself, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Listen, I always this is like a staple question I always ask my guests. How did that happen? That your line of work is, at least on the surface, somehow aligned with your passion and with your hobby?
I suppose my grandparents had a house down near Rosslare in Wexford, and there's a big sandy beach. And now I was raised in Dublin. A lot of my peers that I would have grown up with in school, no one was really into fishing, actually, very few. Myself and my cousins, who I used to go to my granny's house, even still would be kind of, and my brother would kind of still be fishing pals, So really, growing up in Wexford, just hanging out on late June evenings, not even worrying too much about catching, just messing about on the beach and catch the odd bass, the odd flatfish. None of us we never really learned that much. We probably all picked up bad habits, using hooks that were too big to catch plaice, or smallish flats. So we really only ever caught doggies and bass, but it was enough to keep us going. And that would have been kind of throughout. I was kind of, that would have been 80s, early 90s, and obviously kept it up. And maybe late teens, early 20s. I didn't fish so much, but I suppose and I was supposed to take it into the work context. I was always interested in ecology. I would have done science in college. And to be honest, when I went into college, I wasn't that concerned. I don't think I was mature enough to worry about too much about college. I knew I liked science. I knew I liked the environment. I knew I liked biology. But I just kind of scraped through my undergrad, to be honest. I just did enough to get a 4-year honours degree, and I didn't think too much about it. Went off to Australia for a few years, and then decided I had to make a decision. and I knew I liked ecology. Went back and I did the UCD course in environmental science, and really I did my year, and I would have taken anything, and then a job came, luckily enough, in 2007. An environmental officer job came up in the old Blackrock, in the old Eastern Board regional offices, and to be perfectly honest, they wouldn't have normally hired someone with only college experience, but they could see my enthusiasm for fishing. I mean, generally a lot of people aren't, maybe it's not quite fair to say, but a lot of kind of people do environmental science, angling wouldn't be their first hobby necessarily, but I think they could see that in me, and because I think it was 2007 and a lot of people had work, so I got my foot in the door in IFI, and and as you say, it was great to mix business and pleasure. It was always great, lunchtime in canteens, you'd talk about fishing, and it was, and you talk about poaching and, and what fish have been caught where and what the anglers are saying. So, I mean, it was, I guess it was my general direction. I was just, interested in both ecology and angling. And I would have applied for anything at the time, but luckily IFI came at the right time, and great.
There we go. Fantastic.
And here I am, and they supported me all the way through, and career development and all that. So kind of like the Hotel California kind of thing. You can leave, but they'll never let you go in that sense.
Yeah. Listen. Okay. So that's great, and it's good to know. Listen. Tell us a little bit more why that initiative started with the Marine Recreational Sea Angling Survey, because that's rooted really with European Commission requirement on reporting on catches. Like, I don't want to put the words in your mouth, so if you can explain.
Yeah, well, I mean, essentially, I mean, you've got it now. To be honest, it was quite a while ago. I think 2008, the original legislation came out. So.
So it's not like a recent stuff that European Commission said that we need.
Sorry?
So it's not the recent stuff that European Commission said that needs to be done.
No, it's been talked about for a long time. I mean, as usual, Norway and those, I suppose, even though Norway is in the EU, it's they're kind of similar because it's all IC's directive, which is more an international organization. But we're behind the curve. So the idea was to collect data, so the data will eventually feed into the common fisheries policy. So that, I mean, it's really in roundtable discussions for the future that, when the recreational angling lobby and the commercial angling lobby all sit down together, the commercial angling, have reams and reams of data. I mean, for years, they have had to provide data on what they're catching and what they're releasing, what's dying, what's living, and all that. And, they have solid data. And, we can say, through anecdotal evidence in Ireland, for example, sure, we catch nothing. But unless we actually have, objective data, showing that, anecdote can take over, and that's what leads to bad management decisions. And as you can imagine, the commercial angling, the commercial fishing lobby would be quite powerful, and there's an awful lot of money in it, and you wouldn't blame them for saying, sure, there's plenty of fish for angling, or the anglers are taking too many pollock, or it's their fault that the bass stocks are low. It's not our fault. And unless we actually have a proof to say that no, it's not us, or there is an issue, really it's all just fluff. And I think that's the point. I mean, I mean, you can't get away from the point that our whole reason for doing this is to protect the marine angling stocks for the recreational angler. I mean, there's nothing more in it than that, really, you know?
Do you feel like, because out of the conversations that I had, and, you know, privately and on the podcast, I heard a sentiment expressed a number of times that quite often recreational anglers are not even recognized as a party in the talks where you have environmental organizations, you have commercial fishing organizations, you have all these stakeholders, and quite often recreational anglers' voice is even not heard as, like, you know, who you are and like why even talking to you. Is this something that you also feel, or do you have any different view on that?
Yeah, 100%. And I'm hoping this will change it. I mean, you know, there's a few of us, three of us actually involved in this project are, we could say, passionate about sea angling. Now, I'm sure you all know, I mean, IFI, we've always had inshore marine fishing in our remit, but it's always been the port cousin. You know, it's always been, you know, sea trout and salmon, and they're all, you know, good reasons. You know, they're iconic species in Ireland, but never as much notice has been taken into marine recreational angling. And I think this will change this. And maybe, like, it was great, the response that we got with the behaviour survey, which makes me think that sea anglers do feel like they don't have a voice, and this is an opportunity to give them a voice. And when we have data catch numbers, and I think, I mean, this is going back to Tommy, when we do have this data to take to the table, then that, you know, by reason of, you know, the input from recreation. I mean, we're not going to pull this out of the air. We need input from recreational anglers, and this is how they take part. This is how they contribute by providing data in our face-to-face surveys. And hopefully in the future we're going to come up. Well, it's expensive, but and the COVID thing has slowed it all down. But we're hoping to get we will, whether it's sooner or later, I don't know. I'm still hoping 2020, but we plan to get this angling diary going. Like, so you'll have an app on your phone, and when you go out fishing, you know, after your session, you record how many you've caught and how many you've released. And we'd hope to have a good bunch of sea anglers on all ranges of, you know, avidity. Avidity's, you know, how avid there. It's one of these sites people use it in literature, how avid the angler is. But anyway, all ranges of avidity. You know, how, regardless of how often they go out on a monthly basis. So that would be another data input that really anglers can contribute to. And this is about them putting their hand up and saying we should be at the table, and it's an important activity, and it's worth a lot to rural communities and countless shops around, you know, countless small independent shops around the country.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I hear what you say, and I agree with that we need the data, and we need to bring the data to the table, and nothing makes you a party worth talking to if you bring something solid and concrete to the table. But when I read the first time that, because obviously as an angler myself, it's always in the back of my head, like, oh, commercial fishing, these are the guys who are taking majority of fish. Recreational anglers is the minuscule. There's not even whatever. And when I read that European Commission requires to report on the catches on recreational angling and so on, immediately a alarm bell, right? Immediately the red light start flashing, like, oh, now they, right? I'm making air quotes for the listeners who only using audio version of that. I mean, they want to lump recreational anglers together with commercial sectors and put more restrictions and put more bans and red tape around that. And that immediately, like I said, the red light started flashing. Do you have any comments on that? Do you think there is this danger that, rather than saying like, oh, your catches are minuscule, now the discussion will be like, oh, so you actually do catch and take, such and such an amount of pollock, cod, whatever. Therefore, you're subject to quota, and there's going to be, as a result, we're going to end up with more red tape for recreational anglers.
First of all, no. I mean, I think that's way down the road. Certainly, there'll be no discussion of licensing or anytime soon in Ireland. I mean, as a fisheries manager, I guess, when you look at it one side, if you knew how many, if you had a license and how many people are fishing, and it would make things easier. But I hate that idea. I think it would put the occasional angler off. I mean, say the dad that goes out with his son maybe once or twice a year, and they throw, a ragworm into the sea, and suddenly, oh, do we need a license? And I think it would kill that, and I think that would be disappointing. I think, so certainly no licensing, anytime close. I don't foresee, any quotas and things like that. Now, having said that, if you do find that, for example, over years of, there's for argument's sake, there's less pollock, or, a particular species are around, I don't think most anglers would have an issue about having, bag limits or, length limits and things like that. I mean, I think most anglers now are responsible. I mean, you take back to those Sea Angler magazines back in the 80s, and you'd have a guy and you'd have a line of, his 35 cod that he pulled off a rock. And that was angling. Those days are gone. People might keep a few fish for the table as a prize. But, I think basically, I think, sea anglers are responsible now. And I don't foresee any limits. I mean, for example, Tommy, would you argue you're a bass angler? Do you think the limits on, and I'd rather the bass legislation stayed a bit more static. It confuses me even the way it changes so much. Mm-hmm. But I mean, yourself as a bass angler, do you have a difficulty with, length limits and bag limits and stuff like that?
To be honest, majority of bass anglers, for example, what I found, they're operating almost exclusively on catch and release basis.
Yeah.
Because, in general, sportsmen, whether are anglers or hunters, they care about the resource they're interacting with. And, and I think that is a concern that we see, that resource, fish, namely, disappearing, right? And you mentioned the pictures on the old angling magazines of strings of cod or even sharks were around British waters. There were mako shark fishery. No, it's not easy to catch a mako shark. I don't know, I thought that the last was caught in the 70s, but I was talking with one of the conservation directors from Shark Trust, and she reckons there were some mako sharks were caught recently, but there's like every few in between. So the overall the trend is down, and I think that part of that why you don't see these pictures of the 35 cod on a string is because there's not so many. You can't catch them now anymore. That's why that's the bigger reason why you don't see them, I think.
Maybe.
To your question, I don't think there will be a problem. But where I noticed a pushback from angling community was when the bass. We're speaking now about bass, and that's actually good segue or good pivot in our conversation. For some time, it was banned on catching altogether. And I know that in Ireland, it was like a closed season for like 2 months of a closed season for forever and ever. But as usual, people kind of got used to that. Although there were, talks like, oh, why we can't catch, or why we can't catch if we only catch and release, why it's these months. not the other months, right? Someone throw the dart on the calendar, and this sort of thing. So that what I heard the pushback was like, oh, you can't go and catch a fish now. You can't do angling at all. Now, so this is where I can see a pushback. There's no pushback as long as those measures are being received as measures to protect the resource, protect the fish, catch and release, length limit, bag limit, whatever that is. But the moment where the fishery gets shut down, it's like, no, you can't go target that fish at all. Then where people start to be unhappy.
Yeah, and that was a problem with the bass. I mean, the idea with that was, as you may know, was to do with spawning seasons. But I mean, it was difficult because it was very localized. For example, like thinking back to my days of working with trout and salmon, it depending on the part of the country, spawning could have been, same species, but it could have been a few months earlier, in the south of the country to the north of the country. And you're kind of thinking the same idea with bass. So it's either, are we going to pick May or June, or are we going to pick April to August?
And it probably varies from year to year as well, depending on the weather, water temperature, and
how long it takes for the water to get warm. So it was too subjective. So I think then the decision, okay, we'll leave that, And as you say, I think it pissed guys off because it was just getting to the time when the water's warming up and the fish are starting to arrive, So it was a good time to go. And as you say, once people are careful and they release, and plus, I mean, just say, you were sure it was 2 weeks in a year when spawning is crazy, like you may see the turtles in the Caribbean or something where they all come in. Then maybe there's a good argument to say, leave the fishery for that 2-3 weeks. But it was too great. So I'd agree with that, that it wasn't a great decision. But yeah, I still think that the 40, what is it now, 42 centimeter limit? I should know this. But yeah, I think that's nice. It still makes a good sized fish for the plate. That kind of 42 to 50 centimeter range, they're quite common, So, and you've let them spawn at least once. By that stage.
The one thing that is talked often, and I quite like, and I'm curious what's your view on that, is you also have a maximum limit. So fish over certain limit should be released. That's what, and it's very subjective, and you might argue illogical. It's not illogical because usually bigger fish is better at spawning. So number one, it has a genetics that allowed it to grow that big, whether that genetic is related to just being big or it is related to avoiding predators and, fishing nets and so on. And number two, produces more offspring. So that's one thing I would like to see, like, okay, 42 centimeters, you can, but then when it's, 65 or whatever, right? I'm pulling a number now out of my head. Then it should be released as well. That's.
Yeah. I know. I like, there's a really famous study done on cod, more kind of bringing back the ecology stuff that I like, which is that exact thing. So best laid plans, trying to do some great work. So the ideas was that so the mesh sizes in the commercial trawlers are over a certain diameter to release what they assumed were baby fish. But then what they actually found was that there was a big evolutionary shift or survival of the luckiest towards old adults that were small, so they were genetically smaller, so they were getting by, and the big, as you say, the big fish that are releasing more eggs and they're genetically bigger, we're all getting caught. And I'm pretty sure, like, there's a very strong correlation now between mesh sizes and like back in the day, back in the 40s, like, cod would be 80, 90 pound fish. And they're the biggest they're getting. They're kind of, 20, 30 pounds. And they think there's direct correlation because of that. And that would, best laid plans. I mean, back in the day, it was a great idea. Let's make the mesh size bigger. We release the smaller guys, let them fight another day.
Mm-hmm.
Who can argue with that? And it's this unintended consequences thing. And I think it's great that people learn this through study and say, okay, this was a problem. This was an unexpected problem. Let's deal with it. So yes, there is certainly an argument to be made for releasing those big fish. And I suppose in a way, I assume you're familiar with our, the books. Jesus, what do they call it? The specimen fish book, the IFI specimen guide. So now rather than having to kill a fish and weigh it, bass and other species are length-based, so they can be released.
It's awesome change. It is awesome change.
Yeah.
I love it. One for once that you don't have to kill the fish and because of weighing
and a big beautiful fish, and to be honest, they don't taste as good, the big fish either, so let them live to fight another day.
And the other thing is that they're incredibly slow growing. So I remember when I first caught my first big bass, which was over 70 centimeters long. I quickly realized that fish could be, as old as I am. It could have like a 30 years. And it was like, whoa, why would I kill something that lives on its own and not easy world for 30 years, right? For 2 years. It just didn't make sense at all. Completely.
Yeah. No, I agree. It is. It's sad, and that is, I suppose, and I kill the odd bass. Certainly when I'm fishing down, on holidays with the family and stuff like that, and we can all eat it with a barbecue or something like that. Mm-hmm. But generally those kind of 45 to 55 centimeter fish, they're around. It's the big guys. I think it's where you put your fist in their mouth. Those when you get those big guys every so often.
Yeah. So for everybody who's listening to that, release a big fish. It's good.
They don't taste as good, and it took them a long time to get there. Yeah.
Listen, I have a few other things about bass that I would like to ask you, and I don't know whether you will know these information, but maybe you will. And sorry for doubting you if you do, but if you don't,
no, go for it. Yeah.
But I heard not a story, but an information quite a few years ago that I am looking for to verify. And what is the difference? And that information is about the difference between bass stocks in Ireland versus around Great Britain. And now I'm talking about geographically Great Britain. Around Great Britain, they have a offshore stock, an inshore stock, and sort of this inshore stock has a genetic or numbers backing of the offshore stock, while in Ireland there is no offshore stock, there's only inshore stock of sea bass, and that's why we've seen back in the years the population so depleted where the restrictions and bylaws were introduced. Did you heard anything about that? Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's ongoing work with ourselves, and we do have a bass project. I've been involved in it with Ciara Vogerbauer. She would be leading it. I would have done a lot of sampling work. The consensus is still that we have our own Irish stock. Now, there has been some genetic work done, and nothing conclusive. Because they're a different kind of animal to say salmon, where the genetics, can separate. Because obviously most salmon go back to their river of birth and all that kind of crack. So the separation occurs relatively quickly. But there's enough, general mixing in bass stocks that the genetics doesn't work particularly well. Mm-hmm. Now we're currently, we haven't published anything yet. I'm hoping to publish it soon, to be honest with you. But we're doing, it's this It's microchemical analysis on bass otoliths. So you could get an idea of where their nursery estuaries are, and when they leave their nurseries, where they hang, so where are they caught. So it's called kind of connectivity studies. So we look at some adult stocks, and I suppose the scientific theory behind it is that there's these ear bones. Otoliths are ear bones, and they grow concentrically like the rings of a tree.
Mm-hmm.
So and they also when the rings grow, they suck in elements from the environment, with the same ratio to the environment. Mm-hmm. So you can look at an adult fish, essentially. The theory is you can look at an adult fish, you can go back to his growth rings, like so right before he is born, you can get or right after he is born, you can check his growth rings, you can take a sample of that, and you can match that chemistry with the estuary he was born. So we're doing a lot of work there, and we're hoping to now, our preliminary stuff is saying that certainly, our major kind of nursery estuaries are along the south coast of Ireland. So, kind of I don't want to just give many details. We'll be giving them anyway, but kind of the big estuaries, the big muddy estuaries along the south coast of Ireland is where the vast majority of our juvenile bass are growing.
Yeah.
And then they're coming out. Now, we've also done, you did a bit of the fly tagging work, Tommy, back in the day. We are getting occasional recaptures where they've crossed the Irish Sea, which is really interesting. They're very occasional. So where are those guys going? So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, but still kind of the general consensus is that we have our own stock. And that's why we kind of get our own rules, and we have the commercial ban. I know there are issues with, English trawlers, maybe taking Irish fish, but I suppose that's maybe an argument for another day. It's kind of outside my remit,
Yeah. No, that's the whole problems of enforcement and commercial fishery and all that. Like you said, that's probably entire different podcast.
Yeah. But I do, I think we, at the moment, the common knowledge is that we have our own stock. And we're working on it. As you can imagine, the ocean's a big place. It's tricky. It's tricky than watching lions run around the Serengeti, if you think about it, because once they're underwater, they're gone.
Yes.
The modern technology is helping, though. Yeah.
Listen, on the subject of, I want to go back for a second for a subject of regulation and the regulations that we have in Ireland. Are these Irish interpretation of the framework given by the EU, or is it straight up the EU imposed, let's say, regulation?
I guess. Impose is a harsh word. I suppose you could say Ireland as a member state.
As a non-native speaker, I can always hide behind is it? I don't fully understand the how the word really works, but imposing is maybe it's too strong, but sometimes it feels that way.
No, that's okay. No, but it is one of these kind of, which I don't like to go down that us against them. They're not to say I am a Euro careful person. You wouldn't want to turn. I don't believe in the whole, federal Europe and they throw rules at us. But I think we are now a member of we have members on the European Commission and things like that, and so the decisions are made between member states, what's believed, which is best for the member states. So it's democratic decisions are made, and I guess the decision was that, like a lot of other stuff, we have been requested to provide catch data, so volumes, numbers of fish of a particular species that are caught around Ireland by recreational angling. I mean, it really is that simple, you know, but it's very hard to actually capture that data. But that's essentially it, yeah.
That's what
it's been around for a
doing
long
right
time.
now with the survey, they're capturing that data.
Yeah, well, this is it. So we're only kicking off this year, you know. So it will be led by these kind of face-to-face creel surveys, which they're called, you know. So I mean, you could imagine, if you want to, an analogy of a lake, for example. So obviously the whole coast of Ireland is a lot more difficult. So the idea would be, you know, we just say there's a lake with 3 entrances to it. So we would have, you know, we only have one guy, so he'd randomly decide which entrance to the lake, which entrance to stand at, and he'd interview every angler when he comes in and out of that lake, and you ask him how many fish he's caught, how many did release, what are the size of the fish, thank you very much, sir. And then you would do another study. So he'd collect all that data, and then there'd be another study to, or a census, if you want to call it that, to catch how many, or to find out how many people on average fish on that lake. And then you just multiply one by the other, you know, and that's, but we have to obviously bring that up to the whole coast of Ireland. Yeah. So the random design is very important. So it's essentially, you know, as you can imagine, with staff and subsistence and staying over and cars and like it's very expensive endeavor. Yeah. But if we're to do it properly, we have to, you know, you literally, you know, flick a dice and go, okay, we're going to survey this area coastline for 8 hours on Friday the 7th of September, and we'll do that. We'll hope to, I mean, currently we have 2 guys, hopefully going 3 days a week. Okay. You know, so covering the country. Now it's low, but I mean, I think there's a lot of literature out there to kind of say, listen, you know, it's the best. You know, you can do what you can do, and you look at the caveats, you look at the data, and then and work it out from there. But yeah, the survey is key. So that's why input from anglers and for the future, the diary, as I mentioned earlier, is key.
Cool. You mentioned bass tagging program. Is it still going on?
Yes, I think so. I mean, it might be a bit quieter. We do a few guys regularly catching. And it's useful. It's useful stuff. I mean, the problem with the fly tagging is obviously you need to tag an awful lot of fish to get a very small number of recaptures. Yeah, you know, as I'm sure you can imagine. Say the sea's a big place, but yeah, I mean, we're getting some interesting stuff. I mean, we hope to publish and see what's happening. You know, as I suppose some people, it's very dependent on, you know, where you fish and how you fish. You know, if as actually you may mention, if you're wading kind of, you know, 20 yards out to sea, it's a very hard thing to do, you know, whereas if you're fishing off a boat into shallow water, or fishing off rocks and you have a mat ready, and you're fishing kind of single hook lures, it's a lot easier. You know, if you get, I wonder
were there any changes made to that program, because like we discussed before we started recording this, that you know, the procedure that was good few years ago when I was involved in tagging, and it, you know, it was the reason why I stopped doing that, because my feeling was like every damn fish that is tagged, it's surely a dead fish. Because it's spending so much time out of the water with all the, you know, take out the scales, and like you know, surely scientifically it was perfect, because you were weighing and measuring and taking a scale from the specific location of the fish, and you're putting a tag in and so on. But the first time I saw this happening, where my friend was tagging the fish, I was looking at it as like, man, you better, you know, you use the fillets out of this fish. Before you pull out all the gear that you have with it and you tag it, it's like, no. And like you mentioned, then when you're wading in 20, 30 yards, and it's just impossible. But then on the other hand, just a couple days ago, my friend sent me a photo of the fish that he caught, and he said, and the fish had a 70 centimeters length. And maybe 15 minutes later, he sends me another email and says, like, don't you think that fish looks familiar? And sends me another photo of the fish saying, like, I caught it like 2 years ago or a year ago, and then it was 69. It's the same fish. And I'm watching these two photos of the bass, and it's like, well, now when you said it, maybe. And then it's like, well, if you tag it, then maybe.
Yeah, come on, how would you know that? I mean, we've done some crazy stuff. I mean, there's a place where a lot of bass congregate, a lot of kind of 30 to 40 centimeter fish congregate, and we do kind of a netting survey, and it was crazy. Now, so you might you do a quick kind of a half decker trawl, so just kind of catch a lot of fish to tag and release. And you may have caught 200 bass in a haul, and you go over it again and you catch another 200, and not one fish would be the same fish. Like, I think that's amazing. So you're kind of, well, how many fish are down there? It's just that kind of stuff blows me away. And so just he's just got that smile on him, like
exactly. And
I don't buy that.
you never know. But on the other hand, he spent so much time on we were laughing. He has an agreement with bass to chase his lures, sort of.
Yeah. You tag him. I mean, this is it. I mean, as you say, sometimes I get worried about that. I mean, I still use the hard plastics because I just don't get any luck in the soft plastics. I try, and then I kind of give up and I go into the hard. Maybe it's where I've always fished. I've generally fished over rocky, big bouldery ground, and the hard plastic or the soft plastics don't really seem to work. They just get caught all the time, unless I'm just not fishing them right. But
soft plastic is getting caught.
Yeah, my soft plastics, because I'd be fishing over kind of granity boulder fields, shallow water.
Yeah.
And if I try and do the tick that everyone says you have to do, I just get caught all the time.
I found it quite the opposite, that it maybe because it's how they're rigged, because my hard plastics, now we're getting into the geeky stuff of bass fishing, but that's good. The hard plastic lures, I usually rig them with trebles. And I find when I'm fishing over sort of like underwater meadows and rocky grounds and so on, they're catching a lot of weed, and it just doesn't work. So soft plastics for me works better because I'm rigging them like with a single hook, whether it's just a single hook with the jig head or without it, and then it just not catching all the weeds and not doing anything else. And it's like a little bit like yourself. It's a little bit like a black art. Sometimes. There is a place when you were catching fish on the hard plastic lures, and suddenly you don't catch anything, and then you change it to soft plastic, and it just like switches on, right? And you don't know why. And then I had personally, the moment I started fishing with soft plastics, I found myself fishing much more with softies than with the hard ones, based on the results. And like, I don't know, this it all depends on.
But so say, do you have like every people who are into them, and I watch them fish because I go, and they always say, well, no, you it's a different retrieve with the softie. Like you're on the bottom, and it's a tick, and it's a small retrieve. So do you do a straight retrieve with your soft plastics, or do you play the bottom?
No. So usually, like there's two things that I do. Like I either do constant retrieve with a twitching rod, and I'm varying the twitching of the rod, or I twitch the rod all the time and just doing like 2-3 turns, then one turn, then 3 turns.
So you're on the bottom. You're bouncing the bottom. Yeah.
Not really. Not
Really, yeah.
not really, because I don't think that the soft plastic it works the way it swims. I feel it works best without the a lot of weight. And if you put like a sort of like a Texas rig with the weight that slides on the or maybe like a weighted hook, it kind of tends to dive, right? So it tends to dive, but I feel like it loses its the way its action. So in those conditions, I prefer hard plastic, because then if you have like a height of water to work with, then you know you're not gonna catch weed or anything else. So you can use trebles on the hard plastic, and it kind of dives and works well. But as soon as the water starts to be shallow or there are like a vegetation underwater, I switch to soft plastic, and I had a very good result with Savage Gear Sand Eel that you were with the little jig head.
Yeah, no, they're the guys I use in the fish minnows, you know. As I said, I have very little luck with them, and I just need. I'm going to try again this year. I'm going to put in the hours this year, because once I get confident with them, I'll never turn back. Because sometimes, you know, over the years, now I generally only leave a treble on the tail with the hard plastics.
Oh,
but you know, certainly when you have the 3 trebles on it, it can really wreck a big fish, you know.
Oh no!
You know, they can, you know, a set of hooks in the gills and you know, side of the mouth.
I only ever used once. It was a Daiwa Saltiga, like a really large hard plastic lure, minnow lure with a lip. So they had a little bit of dive to it, and it was rigged with three trebles. But like you said, unhooking that is just a mess. And this is one of the things that I love so much about soft plastics, that I'm rigging them only with a single hook, and you don't even need the pliers often. You just and people who are listening to that, they can go to my YouTube channel, Tommy's Outdoors YouTube channel. There's quite a couple of videos of me fishing for bass, and you can see that I'm just literally taking the lure in the hand, just unhook it, and it's like no big deal at all. You don't know it messing. It's just like
and I think that's a huge advantage. And I think once people do now, I haven't realized it yet, but I got to keep working on it. That softies are more successful at attracting bass. Certainly in some situations than the hard plastics. I mean, I suppose the hard plastics, when you look at, certainly say the feed shallow type ones, they look beautiful in the water. They have that gorgeous, you know, sprat looking swim, and you can see why fish come up and attack them. But I mean, underwater, it seems that soft plastics are. I mean, certainly you're a convert. Would you lean more towards soft plastics yourself, then, or just situations?
If I don't need the depth, if I don't need to, I would probably use. I would lean more towards soft plastic. But you know what? I'm probably the worst person to talk about the lures, because, like, for example, my friend was making hard plastic lures, and he sent me a bunch of them, and I was catching fish on them, so I never bothered to use anything else. You know, so I'm type of angler that is happily using one lure through my entire 4-hour session and never change it. But there are people who are changing and trying different things. Now, then I changed to those Savage Gear Sand Eels, and all of a sudden I had a better result. Now, you know, you never know if I would still fishing the same lure, would I have also better results? You never know.
You can never tell. I mean, that's the funny thing, and I know I did for the because I wanted to get successful on my softies ones. There's a nice place around y'all where sometimes when the fish are, there aren't big numbers, and so we were catching a lot on. It was basically the lure I got hooked on was the feed shallow, you know, the tackle house one. And so, you know, catching a lot of bass nearly every cast. And I said, okay, I'm gonna go on to my you know, fish minnow. Went on to the fish minnow. Nothing for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And so what is going on? Went back to the hard plastic and started catching them again.
Huh.
And I kind of thought, Christ, what's going on there? And actually, I went to so often that argument is when the bass are feeding, they're just going for everything.
Yes.
So that's kind of made me think that there's a preference there. And I remember in Australia, my wife is Australian, so we went out to this place called Yeppoon in Queensland last year, and her old man's big into fishing, into the estuaries, and if they can't get out for the big kind of Spanish mackerel, there's a lot of estuary fishing. And we were sitting around, and I had nearly blanked for the day, and I just, you can hear fishy, and then I hit a nice fish, and these, I don't know, for whatever reason, in tropical waters, I don't know if you ever fished in the tropics, but just to do, it must be the warmth of the water, their energy is so much higher, and smaller fish fight really hard, and it's great fun. And so basically we had all sorts of lures, and we were throwing everything at them, and they liked this particular type of, they're called hards, I think, and they only seem to get them in Australia. So there you go. I tried to get them in Ireland, and you can't bloody get the things. But anyway, we were throwing loads of lures down there, and then eventually we were all on these hards, and they have just, I don't know if you know those tormentor lures, like they really shake really hard. Yeah. That kind of idea. And they just went crazy for them. And there were these things called, they were called blue nose salmon, and they're great fun, but that was the only thing they had any interest in. So, no, there is this kind of thing. There's certain kind of attractiveness to particular lures,
Yeah.
So it's interesting, like.
There's also the thing that like they say, the lure has to catch an angler first to then have an opportunity to catch a fish.
Well, that's me. That's me. That's me.
That's a lot of that. I like right now. I'm lucky enough being around anglers long enough that I'm mainly fishing with the lures that are made by my buddies. So like I mentioned, I used to fish with the hard plastic lures called taps. I don't think you can get them anymore. And now I have these soft plastics called pirate lures. That's another of my.
I got a bunch of them actually at the Angling Expo this year.
There you go. So I'm giving.
Do you like them? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm giving them a good try this year because I got a bunch of them, and there is probably as many opinions about the lures as anglers.
I know.
My personal one is that it doesn't matter that much as long as the fish is around.
That was my believer, but then I gave you those two anecdotes to fall out of the water.
This is what makes it so fun, right? I said it once to my friend that if not the fish that is actually a wild animal and unpredictable, fishing would be very simple. He was my God, how can you? Right, because he's like a geek. He goes into every detail of the reel and the hook and the rig and this and that. Yeah. And I said, well, look, this is all simple. You just have a lure and a line. That's simple. You can complicate it all you want, but that's simple. That's the fish that makes it difficult, and it's the fish that makes it interesting. Because like this conversation we had in the coffee table about pike fishing not the other day. It was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I keep repeating that because picture like a bunch of buddies a night before, going out of the boat fishing for pike, sitting around with a beer, and they talking about their tactics and techniques and this and that, and you catch pike on this and that and something else. And one guy says like, well, you're right, but there's the one problem. Pike doesn't know about it. Pike doesn't know about it. These lures are the best. Yeah. No, and this is the biggest problem. If Pike only know that these lures are the best, they would be catching it. This is
it. You can never tell, and it is. I mean, and that's why it's fun. And sometimes they're just around, and those. I love the calm evenings where it's a full moon night or a new moon night. And they're the evenings where, and I still believe that that's when I catch the most fish. But is that because I put most effort in at those times?
That's the point. that's the whole point. I probably made it in one of my recent vlogs. I don't know if that footage actually made the cut to the actual vlog, but this is what I was saying. Like, this is the conditions where I catch most of the fish. And then the next one is like, well, but this is the conditions where I fish most often. So what do you expect? Right?
Yeah. And I suppose this is it, Tommy. I mean, going back to the survey, I mean, that kind of stuff. I mean, the survey response not only will inform how much has been caught for angler-centric stuff. I mean, I think there'd be, almost personal views. Like I will find that kind of stuff interesting, so we could match up, catch data with, salooner cycles and, tides and stuff like that. I mean, just, it'd be, the actual volumes of catch mightn't be as interesting to the anglers as, interesting little things like that, which may come out.
Will those results be available to anglers, or is it going to be like a...
Oh, yeah, of course. Oh. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Now, like everything in the public service, we don't really have the staff to hammer these things out quickly. But yeah, sure. No, it is. No, if the stakeholders inputting, they'll deserve... everything will be anonymous and all that, but we will have data release percentages, and that kind of stuff.
Is it going to be on the IFI website?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't hold your breath. We have to kind of collect and analyze and all that at this stage. But I'm hoping now, as I said, we'll close the behaviour and attitude survey soon enough, and I will probably take a couple of weeks. Away from the survey work to sit down and thrash it out, and you should get some nice stuff on, as you say, catch and release rates and where people fish, when they fish, age groups.
Listen, just to maybe wrap it up, at least subject of bass. What's your view on stocks and the numbers? Because obviously, anyone who's fishing, angling would say that there is less and less fish. Some people tend to say that there's less and less fish, but the ones that you're catching are bigger, a bit better quality. So from your position, how does it look like? How does it look, the trend of bass stocks, like numbers and size, and more importantly, what do you think is the future? How it's going to play it out, and what we can do to make that future better, other than filling out the survey?
I mean, it's obviously a nearly impossible question to answer. I mean, it's kind of anecdotal stuff. I certainly think there's been a recovery in bass around the coast in kind of the last 20 years or so. Our numbers of babies of age 0 fish, we've been sampling particular nursery sites since 2013 on an annual basis. And those numbers, they go up and down, but they stay relatively steady, low numbers compared to kind of, French estuaries and Spanish estuaries and, estuaries in the south of England. But nonetheless, consistent numbers. So that's positive, I suppose. It's about getting those guys, as you say, they're a slow-growing fish. Like a 0 fish this year, won't be 40 centimeters, won't be 50 centimeters for, 5-6 years anyway. And then that other, that other 20 centimeters might take another 10 years, or 15 years. So they are slow-growing fish, and we do have to look after them. Having said that, again, this is what this survey is all about. This survey is about getting our first, actual baseline, a real. I mean, even at the moment, like we don't know how many people fish in Ireland. Like we have numbers, but we would have done surveys and omnibus phone surveys back in 2015. But the questions weren't, how do you go sea fishing? How often do you go sea fishing? There was kind of how often do you go fishing, and there was an extrapolation between, trying to break up salmon anglers and sea anglers, and a lot of them do both.
Yeah.
So really, our current estimate are between kind of 70,000 and 120,000 people go sea angling at least once a year. So we really know nothing, you know, and that's really all we know, up with that really general number that changes, between kind of 2 and 4% of the population. So first of all, we have to know that, which we're going to do, and we have to know in 2020 and 21 how many people are going fishing and how much do they catch. And once we have that baseline, then we can do a survey like that kind of every 5-7 years, or however much money we have. And it's only then really that we can, it will go beyond the anecdote of, old Johnny caught 20 bass there, and
yeah,
and this stuff. I mean, obviously anecdotal evidence is important, and we all listen to it. But I think, as a scientist, as much as possible, you try to move away from anecdote, and you just want objective data. I was like, this is where we're at in 2020, 21. And then we can put in measures. I don't know, there's talk now on the table about, proper marine protected areas around Ireland. And that's kind of at high level discussions at the moment, between kind of managers and academics and stuff like that about, where do we put these? Why would we have a marine protected area? So what's important? Is it rare species? Is it known nursery areas? Is it, so we have to make these decisions, and then how do we protect them? And for example, work we're doing on bass, I would hope, that we'll have, okay, these estuaries are really important for our bass, which is, it turned into iconic species. It's important for tourism. I'm sure you've seen all the guys out around the country, English, French, and stuff like that, who come over to fish for bass. And if we can nail
our bass, that's what I heard as well. Like, oh, what are they doing here?
I know, and some of the guys. I mean, I have actually seen them doing crazy stuff. But I mean, a lot of the English guys tend to be good at releasing and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna generalize. I won't get in that. But yeah, I mean, that's it. If we have this information, how much fish are people catching? Where are the important estuaries? Why are these fish important? And then we have good, strong evidence to input, as to why we are designating these areas as marine protected areas. And my hope would be that marine protected areas will actually have strong protections. No netting, no fishing. I mean, SACs are all great in theory, but there's still a lot of development that goes on in them.
Mm-hmm.
So to be honest, and this would be kind of more personal feeling of mine, I'd much rather see fewer areas with protection, but with real strong protection.
Yes.
So if these areas are chosen carefully, and then just no messing here, I think anglers will accept that. I mean, it might piss them off if it's right in their, their favorite spot, but if they can see the reason, I mean, and maybe, maybe there might be, you might have rules, I don't know, barbless hooks or, or something like that, but and I'd love to see things like that happen in the future, because I think the protections that we have around the coast now aren't, certainly for commercial fishing and, dredging and this kind of stuff that can be quite damaging, isn't really there. There's always ways around. And evidence that I've seen in Australia, where angling is a much more popular pursuit than it is in Ireland, where they've had to put in, strong protections.
Yeah.
There's no messing. Like if someone goes out bow fishing in Australia, they have a map of the area they're fishing, and there's areas that are proper MPAs, and there's no fishing, no dropping anchors, and you get hefty fines.
Yeah. And
it's not like Ireland still where he's only doing, he's all right, we give him a fine, a little fine. Whereas in Australia, it's the rules, you have the map, and they throw the book at you. And I think if people are conservationists, I think people would agree with, not everywhere, but little areas which are known to be very productive areas, very productive nurseries, very, good for species protection. I think it's important that these areas are protected, and hopefully we will, with this kind of evidence-based work, we'll actually be able to make clearer management decisions, and that's the actual crux of this. So we're not the guesswork is limited,
Yeah.
And that's,
I made one other attempt at this question, and acknowledging that this is all based on evidence, on anecdotal, not evidence, but anecdotal. But you're an angler yourself. Do you obviously nobody questions the recovery of bass from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's around 5-6 years ago where a lot of people in angling community start saying, based on their anecdotal evidence, like, oh, the stocks are collapsing again, it's going down, and you might or might not notice that from your own angling experience. Is that something that's kind of local to where I sit, or is it some sentiment that you aware of that as well?
Listen, I mean, there's talk. I mean, there's guys I know guys who fish around Waterford, and I have, they're prolific. Like, they're out every chance they get, and I haven't heard much change. I wouldn't, since I had the kids, I wouldn't get out that much. I'd get out occasionally. Would get out a lot when I was doing field work. Like, we'd often do I would have done a lot of estuarine surveys for the Water Framework Directive over the years. So in the evening, we generally go out bass fishing after. And to be honest, a lot of the places where I used to get really excited about going to, because back 5 years ago, you would have hit a lot of them. They have gone a bit quieter, but I don't know. Is that just look at the draw, So so it's hard to tell, and I do there's certainly a lot of talk now of bass moving up the East Coast. More people are catching bass more often, Malahide and Drogheda and Dundalk and stuff like that than they have before.
Who knows?
So you hear you do hear both sides of it. I mean, I had a bad year last year. I think I only caught about five fish, and maybe I fished a little less. But they still turn up. Like, I haven't had one of those. You go on those sessions, and they just seem to be hopping out of the water, and you're catching kind of 6-10 fish in a session or something. I haven't had that for a few years. I don't know why that is. It could just be timing, So I always feel like this is kind of. What's your feeling on it?
My feeling is that this is we looking at something obvious, and we kind of afraid to admit it, and therefore we kind of hiding behind maybe. You never know. It's anecdotal, and this is part of the I would like to believe that they're still recovering. It's just I'm a shitty angler and I'm not catching them. Or I would like to believe that I change the lures and they're not that good. Or maybe I kind of feel like I swimming that lure differently than I used to, and they're not and I'm finding all these things to make myself feel better about it. And kind of don't want to admit something that is seen in the naked eyes. Like, okay, like you said, we didn't have that session that we caught, 6, 7, 10 fish in the last 5 years. And we used to have them. Right? What does it mean?
Yeah.
Right? It's anecdotal. It's not scientific. It's like, oh, what do you fish? Right? Do you have as much time as before for fishing? That's all fine. But I feel, and again, it's my gut feeling, we kind of afraid, maybe again it's not the right word, but afraid to admit it. Like, whoa, something bad is happening. What we should do about it? This is my feeling. But then again, like I mentioned, I feel also that there's a less fish turning up, but the ones that are turning up are bigger, are of better quality. Now again, is it just what it is, that there's a less fish but they're bigger and this is like a natural cycle? Or maybe it has nothing to do with the cycle and just those bigger fish are, more likely to be where I'm fishing because there is no small fish and that's why they're there. And they're before me, or not just because of the competition we're not there, right? We don't know. This is this area where we can start making arguments. And now when you want to be positive about it, then you go like, oh, there's a less, but they're bigger because this is right? If you want to be negative about it, you go like, oh, they're hammered, they'll be gone in 2 years and like whatever. We just don't know. And that's what I also feel like survey like this is so important because like you said, it gives you a baseline and then you can repeat that survey in 2 years time, 3 year time and compare it with the baseline. And then and then there is no room for
exactly. And then here we go. So something is affecting, our stocks around for recreational anglers around the country. And until that, we can have the chat. I mean, it's interesting when the point you made about bigger fish but less. And I was going to start scraping around for a report, but there was a report done. We had for bass in Ireland. So as I say, we do these juvenile surveys for kind of known nursery areas. And one year, and I think it was 2012, I could be wrong, where the recruitment was huge. Like it was 10 times as many 8-0 fish as you'd normally get. And we did notice, I think it was maybe 2 years ago. So then you might remember, maybe it was more, maybe it's 3 or 4 years ago, where there seemed to be an awful lot of kind of 35 to 45 centimeter fish around. They're just, there were a lot of them being caught. And we were thinking that was that cohort, that year coming of age. And that's what, then they're all spreading and they started spawning, started feeding. And maybe that age group are the most ferocious feeders. They're coming of age and they're snapping at everything. And then maybe as those fish get older, are they more careful? Are they more,
very less of them also.
Are they more
just
more,
basic biology? I'm not saying down anything. It's
as they get older, they die out. Are they more careful feeders? So maybe there was that kind of, maybe there was 2 years of bumper angling and like I'll actually send you on the report. Like there's no doubt one of the years that just the recruitment was amazing for whatever reason. Like maybe the tides are perfect. Because what happens with so generally bass will spawn at sea. So they'll be in kind of big spawning balls. Now, we're not really sure, as you said, in Ireland, it might be more localized. Certainly, there's kind of big, there has been documentary proof of kind of big kind of spawning balls, in is it George's Channel, that kind of area. Where just there's a load of sperm and eggs mixing together. And then literally the fertilized eggs drift in the currents. So there was a perfect storm one time in Ireland where just all of the eggs, rather than a minority of them, were just washed up into a perfect area for larvae to grow and all the rest. And that's kind of what happens. And as I said, maybe that was the bumper few years.
True.
Who knows? So maybe it could be. And you would pick up those trends when we do our surveys and things like that. And I think that's the idea, is that this is for, so there's a lot going on. I mean, the easiest thing is to blame. I mean, there's certainly problems with poachers out there. And I definitely think particular poachers, there is kind of a bit of a homing thing with bass as well. They do tend, there's been some evidence maybe that bass do tend to go, they might head off in the winter, but they generally come back to the same feeding grounds. So if a particular guy is focused on netting in one area, year in, year out, it's possible that he could decimate a local stock around there, you know. You know, we have our fisheries officer trying to catch those guys, but you just don't know. I mean, in the bigger scheme of things, how much of an impact does the odd El gouger, you know, take when he's netting? It's just it's an impact, obviously.
Yeah.
You know.
Listen, is there just to start wrapping up this thing slowly? We went really bass heavy. Is there is there anything related to any other species that is worth mentioning?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's obviously okay. So the important, like the key species, you know, as advised around Ireland, the key species for us to survey are bass, pollock, cod, and the Elazar so the rays, the skates, the sharks.
No wrasse in that group?
Sorry?
No wrasse in that group?
No, but no, we are, you know, we're spending all this money going out doing the surveys, so we will be recording wrasse data and all that, and probably in the future we will. But the key species, you know, decided by ICES for whatever reason, I presume it's commercial catches, and they want to learn more about the
reason
species.
I'm asking about wrasse is that I heard that there is a like a growing problem, or maybe not growing, but just found the problem of wrasse being caught and then exported to salmon farms as a fish.
I heard that.
So that's what I'm asking. Is the wrasse considered one of those?
And I hear there's good money. I don't know. Did you ever watch that show? There was show on BBC about the fisheries around Cornwall. So it was very good, actually. And they spoke about that a lot. And guys are making, you know, small artisan guys with lines are making good money. You know, catching bass or catching wrasse. And to be honest, our wrasse don't like being pulled out of deep water at all. Yeah, you know, so
they suffer barotrauma badly straight away.
So that's, to be honest, that kind of work is the work I love as well. And that's not for now, but if hopefully we get a proper marine recreational department or whatever in the future, that'll be work I'd love to be involved in. Say, you know, doing nice studies on, you know, when you haul up, you know, what's the best way to haul up a fish? You know, how do you let him recover? Do you let him recover in a basin? Do you throw him straight back in? And there's some really clever work that you can do. I mean, it wouldn't work for here. That, you know, there's guys that done work on in the bonefish fishery, for example, in the Caribbean, with things as simple as, so they catch a bonefish, they'd release him, but they'd hook a, you know, tiny light float on a bit of very light line to his back, and then they'd measure how quick, you know, the float moves around, and, you know, so you could measure, you know, do they sit for long, do they move, how much ground do they cover, and you can kind of measure this with drones and stuff like that. Now, obviously, it's a different habitat there because we don't have a predator like a barracuda that will snap up the weak fish. Yeah. But, you know, these kind of lovely thoughts. You know, we might be able to put data tags on, you know, pollock. Put a data tag in the fish. You release them. You know, do they swim back down to where they should go? You know, obviously you've caught the bass and you release them and they go. They tilt off to the side. And you think, should I even bother letting them go? I'm fascinated by that stuff. I love to see. Yeah. Are they better in 2 minutes, or are they struggling for an hour until the sea?
That's the thing, and that's an argument that I initially hated, but over time I became more fond of this argument that, you know, catch and release fishing is not no kill, because there is a mortality rate, and in fact we don't know what is the mortality rate in those catch and release fish, and that was often like, oh, you know, closed season shouldn't apply to catch and release anglers. And it's like, well, really, you know, not every fish released is like, especially, right, like when they're getting, you know, treatment of the sand wrapping and everything else, and they're all for the grip and grin for like, you know, 7 minutes.
Yeah.
So
I know that. I mean, the 100% are traumatized. It's the argument. How traumatized? Will they be fine in 10 seconds? Or are they floating around like they've been hit by a car until the seal snaps them up? And it's very species dependent, and that's where, I mean, it's hard, it's difficult, but it's work that I'd love to get into. And we may find better ways. I mean, I don't like saying anything, because this, for example, personal stuff. I mean, I would kind of think, the trebles.
Mm-hmm.
I do it. I still do it.
Mm-hmm.
My kid caught he was 9 last year. He got his first lure caught bass there last year. I was very proud of him. We kept him. But yeah, do we need 3 treble hooks?
I would discourage that even from the perspective of handling the lure yourself, and then this thing can catch and tangle and everything. Oh, it's just
I know, it's crazy. Yeah, but when you really want to catch a fish, and you kind of and I think you're more likely to hold on. Let's be honest. Like, but you're also more likely to fly hook them, and So would you not like a nice clean take rather than getting them down the side of his body? Anyway, and they are all, and they could all go into kind of a catch and release experiments.
Mm-hmm.
We could have guys fishing with 3 treble hooks versus guys fishing with a soft plastic with a single hook, and it'd be it will be a fun job. Let's be honest.
Listen, Diarmuid, let's stay in touch, and let's keep in touch, and any cool stuff like that going on. We may do it again. Meet again and talk about catch and release or whatever work you're gonna be doing in a next couple of years time. Listen, it was pleasure talking with you. I'm sure that our listeners and I myself, we learned a ton from you. We're looking forward to the results of that survey.
Yeah, great. And I'm sorry now if we kind of wandered off into bass catching territory.
Is there anything? So I see that as that. Is there anything that you were hoping to tell us and we didn't get there?
It's not specifically, to be honest. I hadn't. We just, I suppose we didn't spend much time in the actual, the IMREC project. I mean, probably enough time for yourself. I mean, I think you got the idea, really. We're doing it. We're doing it to protect the resource into the future. I mean,
I think that's an important message. I think this is an important message because when like I said on the top of the show, when you read that, this is European Commission requirement to provide catches from recreational anglers, then the red lights start flipping, and it's like, oh my God, now they're gonna lump us into the and I suppose this is the most important message to say, like, hey guys, participate, take part in this, because the reason we're doing that is to actually ensure the future for sea angling rather than put more red tape. But in fairness, ensuring future sea angling might require some red tape on the other hand, right?
Well, this is it. I mean, I suppose I'll leave with participation in the survey is completely voluntary. But really, when you share your information about your own fishing trip, it will contribute to the development of sound policy decisions that will safeguard recreational fishing. I mean, and we're all anglers, we're all keen anglers, we're all, we love the resource, love, I hate saying it, but we're big fans of fish,
True.
Yeah, I don't want to say I love fish, we know.
We all know.
You know what I mean. You know what I mean. I'm not Troy McClure, So, but yeah, I mean that's it. And our understanding of recreational angling depends on the data that we get from recreational anglers. So how well we understand it is down to the guys who are out there fishing, you know. And it's and input would be great, and we will, if anyone hasn't done the behavior and attitude survey yet, that'd be great if they could do it.
I'll put a link. I put a link in the description of the show to the survey, so people who. How long that survey still will be going?
I think we might do another push on Thursday, and we'll be close it up next week. I mean, it's been a great response. I mean, we've got over 1,000 people, so I mean it's quite a robust data set now. You know, if you're only getting a couple hundred people, you'd be a bit concerned about, you know, is it biased towards more keen anglers and stuff like that. But we've got enough people to get a good draw. And
the show will be going out week after next, so you know, I'll check.
It'll probably be closed.
Okay, it will be closed. Okay. But you know, I can do it through social media. Kind of push it again this week, next week. Just to get more people and do it like a teaser of this show. After filling a survey.
No, good man. I mean, and that's it all. But I suppose that what we can say for keen anglers is that this, by hook or by crook, we will have the diary. We're going to get the diary sorted. Now, it's, as I'm sure you can imagine, with you know, anything to do with apps and all that is expensive, and we don't have the expertise in house. But more and more that we've heard, I've been on the kind of working groups for recreational fishing, the international working groups, and while these Creel face-to-face surveys are a key, you know, part of collecting baselines and stuff like that, the diary is the ongoing data collection tool, you know. So whereas we may only be able to afford to do the actual proper random survey every, you know, 4 or 5 years, if we get input from anglers, you know, in the diary, it's brilliant. And we hope to make it good in the sense that not only will anglers only be, you know, every time they go fishing, they'll be recording their catch data. It will actually be their diary, so they can refer back 6 months down the road.
Provide a value for them as well.
Yeah, and so look what I caught, and you know, my dream now, it might be miles off. My dream would be, you know, they can share with their pals for, you know, bragging rights, or, you know, times they went and fish they caught. And, you know, it would be great, and not only it would be kind of nice for people to have that on their phones or on their computer, but we'll be getting real valuable data. So that will be something, and anyone's interested in that, we have an email address. I think it's cangling at, just wait, I'll make sure I get it right. It's you'll see it on our website anyway. It's Sea Angling Ireland anyway.
Okay. Awesome. Diarmuid, listen, thank you very much. It was a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again.
Thanks, Tommy. Take care of yourself.